Hello and welcome to BYJU'S Exam Prep IAS. Let's get started and look into our daily quiz. Before we start with the practice questions for the day, we have an announcement. BYJU'S Exam Prep IAS would be conducting IAS offline workshop, which is scheduled to be conducted on 20th of November 2022 between 5 p.m. and 7 p.m. If you are in any of these cities, one in Delhi, we will have the English session handled by Dr. S.P. Jasa, followed by the Hindi session by Ajit sir. Then we will have another session in Lucknow. This will be taken by Abhay Thakur sir, followed by the Chennai session, which will be on 19th of November at between 10 a.m. and 12 p.m. in Chennai. If you are located in any of these cities, please do attend our IAS offline workshop. Let's get started and look into the first question. With respect to Sant Kabir Das, which of the following statements is are correct? He did not undertake any formal education but was well trained as a weaver. He never opposed idol worship as he felt it is a means to focus one's religious pursuits and bhakti. His famous writings include Sakti Granth, Anurag Saga, and Bijak. Which of the statements are correct? The answer to this is 3 only. Why have we taken this practice question? Because this article on the Hindu makes a reference to poet Kabir Das. Let us try and understand what are these statements. When you look into the first statement, he did not undertake any formal education. This part of the statement is right. However, he was well trained as a weaver. This statement is wrong. So the first statement is wrong as a whole. He never opposed idol worship as he felt it is a means to focus one's religious pursuits and bhakti. This once again is a wrong statement as Sant Kabir Das opposed idol worship. His famous writings include Sakti Granth, Anurag Saga, and Bijak. This statement happens to be the right one. If we look into some of the key facts with respect to Sant Kabir Das did not take any formal education. He was not even trained as a weaver. While his poems abound with weaving metaphors, his heart was not fully into this profession. He was on a spiritual journey to seek the truth, which is clearly manifested in his poetry. His great writing includes Bijak, which happens to be a huge collection of poems. Sant Kabir Das was best known for his two-line couplets referred to as Kabir Ki Dohe. The major part of his work was collected by fifth Sikh Guru, who happens to be Guru Arjan Dev. The verses of Kabir Das are found in Sikhism scripture, which happens to be Guru Granth Sahib. And when we speak about idolatry, he always opposed the idea of worshipping the idols and showed clear confidence in Bhakti and the Sufi ideas. These are some of the important pointers with respect to Sant Kabir Das. Now let's look into the next practice question. Consider the following statement with respect to transfer of High Court judges. Consent of a judge for his first or subsequent transfer would not be required. Only the transferred judge and no one else is entitled to file a case challenging such transfer. Which of the statements given above are correct? The answer to this is both. Why have we taken this practice question? Because this article on the Hindu makes a reference to the transfer of judges. Let us try and understand what are these statements. When you look into the first statement, consent of a judge for his first or subsequent transfer would not be required. This basically means that if there is a High Court judge, let's say he is present in the state of Kerala, in the Kerala High Court. Now this person will be transferred to the Gujarat High Court. Will his consent be taken? No. His consent is not required for the transfer, even if it is for the first time or the subsequent transfer. So the permission, the consent of the High Court judge who is being transferred is not required. Only the transferred judge and no one else is entitled to file a case challenging such transfer. This statement once again is right, which means to say if a person, a judge, is transferred from one High Court to another, only that judge can question it and no one else can question. Even the public cannot question this particular decision taken by the Supreme Court. So what we have is that only the transfer judge and no one else is entitled to file a case challenging such transfer. Where do we have this in the Constitution? We have Article 222 of the Indian Constitution, which speaks about transfer of a judge from one high court to another. The President may, after consultation with the Chief Justice of India, transfer a judge from one high court to any other high court. Then we have one of the landmark judgments of the Supreme Court of India in K. Ashok Reddy versus the Government of India. It is in this landmark judgment that the Supreme Court went on to say only the transfer judge and no one else are entitled to file a case challenging such transfer, and even the aggrieved judge can only question on limited grounds, not on all types of grounds. And at the same time, when it comes to the transfer, this can be done by the Supreme Court on the basis of public interest, and at the same time to ensure that the efficiency and administration of some other high court is meeting the standards of setting the benchmark to the judicial process. So the Supreme Court can transfer a high court judge because of the public interest, and also to make sure that efficiency and administration of this new high court is also taken into picture. This is what we have to understand with respect to the transfer of the high court judges. Now let's look into the next practice question. Which amongst the following is the best description of cerebrotendinous xanthomatosis, that is CTS? It is a rare genetic condition characterized by short stature and multiple facial, limb and genital abnormalities. It is a rare disorder characterized abnormally elevated levels of iron in the body. It is a disorder characterized by abnormal storage of fats, lipids in many areas of the body. It is a rare genetic disorder that can cause structural changes of the skull, bones on the face and other skeletal abnormalities. Which amongst this is the best description of CTS? It is a disorder characterized by abnormal storage of fats, lipids in many areas of the body. Why have we taken this practice question? Because this article on the Hindu makes a reference to the CTS. So what is the CTS? This happens to be a rare condition where the body is not able to break down the cholesterol. The patient with CTS are unable to break down different kinds of cholesterol which build up in certain parts of the body, which is called as the CTS. So CTS is caused by a change in the CYP27A1 gene, which is involved in the production of an enzyme that breaks down the cholesterol. The condition is inherited and both parents need to pass on the genetic abnormality in order for their child to have this condition. If the child only receives one copy of the abnormal gene, then they are a carrier for CTS but will not have any symptoms. The condition is rare and occurs in an estimated 3 to 5 out of 1 lakh people. The condition affects all genders and ethnicities. What are the symptoms? In the infants and the children, there will be chronic diarrhea during infancy, cataracts in late childhood, frequent bone fractures due to brittle bones. And when it comes to the adulthood, they may see neurological symptoms, dementia, seizures, hallucinations, depression, difficulty with coordination, as well as difficulty with speech. It is this that we have to understand with respect to this rare genetic disease called as cerebrotendinous xanthomatosis. Now let's look into the next practice question. With respect to Baliyatra, which of the following statements are correct? It is a festival held in the state of West Bengal. It is a unique socio-cultural event with glorious history which commemorates the past association of the people of West Bengal with Bali, remembering the glorious maritime traditions of transoceanic voyages. Which of the statements are correct? The answer to this is none. Why have we taken this practice question? Because this article on the Indian Express makes a reference to Baliyatra. Let us try and understand what are these statements. When you look into the first statement says it is a festival held in the state of West Bengal. This happens to be a wrong statement. Why? Because it is not West Bengal, but instead it is Odisha. So the first statement is wrong. When you look into the second statement, it is not the people of West Bengal, but it is the people of Kalinga, which means it is the people of Odisha, and as a result, both the statements are wrong. So what is this Baliyatra? It literally means voyage to Bali and is one of the country's largest open air fairs, which is organized every year to commemorate the 2000-year-old maritime and cultural links between ancient Kalinga and Bali and other South and Southeast Asian regions. If we look into the map, we had Kalinga, which happens to be an ancient kingdom, and from Kalinga they had different kinds of voyages to different countries, which included Burma, Siam, Malaya, Sumatra, Java, Bali, so on and so forth. So if we look into the historical picture, Odisha province was known as Kalinga in the ancient times, and they were commanding a very high position in the maritime activities of India. They were adventurous Kalinga sailors. They were making daring voyages to different parts of the world, and that is why it is called as Baliyatra, which is nothing but a voyage. The dominance of the Kalingas over the sea routes can be understood from the fact that Kalidasa in his Raghu Vamsha referred to the king of Kalinga as the Lord of the Sea. Remember, Raghuvamsha is written by Kalidasa. This is another important factor from the preliminary examination point of view. Now let's look into the next practice question. With reference to proposals of Cripps Mission, consider the following statements. The Constituent Assembly would have members nominated by the provincial assemblies as well as the princely states. Any province which is not prepared to accept the new constitution would have the right to sign a separate agreement with the Britain regarding the future status. Which of the statements given above are correct? The answer to this is 2 only. This happens to be a previous year question from the year 2022. Now let's look into the fact of the day. The fact of the day for today's discussion is Narco test. We have something called as the deception detection test. What is deception? Deception is about lying. This is a deliberate attempt to mislead others as well. So identifying the lies, identifying the deception is what is called as deception detection test. When it comes to the deception detection test, there are multiple types of deception detection test. Let's say for example, we have the polygraph, we have the brain mapping, and one of the tests as part of the deception detection test happens to be the narco analysis. So what is narco analysis? Narco analysis basically is a Greek word which means anesthesia. How is it administered? It involves the injection of a drug called as sodium pentanol, which induces a hypnotic or a sedated state in which a subject's imagination is neutralized. What exactly happens? Let's say for example, me, you, any individual will have his own share of imagination. He would be able to create a story as well. But when the sodium pentanol is injected into this particular person, in such a situation, this imagination process is completely eliminated. So he would not be able to think, he would not be able to imagine. So whatever is in his permanent memory, only that will be able to come out and not the imaginative skills. This test is conducted in government hospitals after a court order is passed instructing the doctors or hospital authorities to conduct the test. Personal consent of the subject is also required. In India, the narco analysis test is done by a team comprising of an anesthesiologist, a psychiatrist, a clinically forensic psychologist, an audio videographer, and support nursing staff. Now the question is, what is the constitutional and the legal perspective? When we speak about narco test analysis, we have to look at the constitutional angle. We have one of the important articles, which is Article 20 of 3, which speaks about privilege against self-incrimination. So if a person undergoes a narco analysis, he is incriminating himself. So this is violating Article 20 of 3. Then we have Article 21 of the Indian Constitution. It speaks about right to privacy. So if a person starts giving out information which is very intricate to himself, which is unknown to another person without his consciousness, he is uttering something. This is also violating Article 21, which is about right to privacy. Then we have right to silence, which is also enshrined in the Code of the Criminal Procedure. One of the sections of the Code of the Criminal Procedure happens to be section 161, which speaks about right to silence and not bound to answer certain questions. In this particular backdrop, it is again violating the right to silence. This is the constitutional angle as well as the legal perspective. Now, if we look into the international laws, the Fifth Amendment to the US Constitution provides that no person shall be compelled in any criminal case to be a witness against himself. The right to remain silent is a legal right recognized explicitly or by convention in many of the world's legal systems. Universal Declaration of Human Rights 1948 under Article 11.1 declares everyone charged with a penal offense has the right to be presumed innocent until proven guilty according to law in a public trial at which he has had all the guarantees necessary for his defense. The International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights 1966, to which India is a party, in Article 14 of 3 of G, says not to be compelled to testify against himself or to confess the guilty. So these are some of the international practices as well. What has the Supreme Court of India said? In one of the landmark judgments in Selvi and others versus the state of Karnataka and another in 2010, the Supreme Court bench comprising of Justice Balakrishna and Ravindran, they went on to say that no lie detector test should be administered except on the basis of consent of the accused. So only if the accused has given the consent, that is when these detector tests can be employed on such a person. Involuntary administration of these scientific tests amounted to a restraint on personal liberty, and this cannot be initiated without the consent of that person, said the Supreme Court of India. This is the first judgment. The second judgment is in reference to Nandini Satpathy versus P.V. Den. In this case, the Supreme Court went on to say no one can forcibly extract statements from the accused who has the right to keep silent during the course of the investigation. So the Supreme Court reiterated this very stance of right to silence. What is the advantage of the narco analysis and why it should not be conducted? First, let us look at arguments that says that narco analysis will have to be conducted. When we look into the present generation, what we are seeing is increasing number of criminals. The crime rate is increasing, and in this particular case of Aftab, what we have seen is a heinous murder. So if we have to make sure that justice is delivered to the victim and this perpetrator of crime, the criminal, is brought to the law books and thrown behind bars, what we require is the narco analysis so that justice is served to the victim. Added to it, this can also serve as a corroborative evidence as well. This will helping down in bringing down the crime rate in the country, and it can also act as a deterrent, which is why narco analysis has to be conducted. What are the odds? What are the concerns with respect to the narco analysis? This particular method is not 100% scientifically proven. There have been ample number of examples as well when the injection or this particular serum is injected to a person more than what is actually required. The person has also passed away. It has also led to the person going to coma as well, since it is not scientifically validated for 100%. This is another major concern as to why this cannot be employed on an individual. What are the recommendations that have been given in the past? In case there is a person who is giving the consent, he should have access to the lawyer and also have physical, emotional and legal implications of the test explained to him both by his lawyer as well as by the police officers. So even before the consent is given by this particular person, the consequences will have to be explained by the police officers and the lawyer. And at the same time, back in the year 2000, we have the National Human Rights Commission, which published the guidelines for the administration of the polygraph test on an accused, and this must be strictly followed whenever consent is given by that particular person. It is this that we have to understand with respect to this topic. So this is it for today. Thank you for watching. All the best.